I'm afraid to ask, Brandon, but have you watched Pluribus yet?
I am happy to answer this because not only have I watched Pluribus, I love Pluribus. I'm a huge Pluribus fan. As a matter of fact, I see some of the Pluribus slander online and on social media, and I get the complaints. Some people say it's too slow. I think it is brilliant. I'm glad that you not only recommended it to me, but stayed on me about it. Because we talked about it on this podcast, and then you mentioned it at our Pickup Hoop session, and I think that nagging me about it is really what led me to watch the show. So a sincere thank you for nagging me about Pluribus.
Oh, happy to help. Now, and you mentioned the slander online, and I'm going to give you my opinion. It's not going to be a spoiler in any kind, and so we're going to have to try to be courteous of those who haven't seen it. But to me, it was like, I don't know, looking like a stock chart where it goes down, where the peak, that first episode was so good. And the first few episodes were really, really good. I was hooked. I really thought there was something there. But as the season progressed, and maybe it was they're trying to drag it out a little bit, I did not get the same, I don't know, excitement watching it that I did with those first few episodes, and why there might be points in episodes that were really good that ticked back up. I do think that the season finished at a much lower point than where it started.
I would agree with that. And I will say that a big part of what appealed to me was what happened in those first couple of episodes, like the mystery, the intrigue, especially that first episode, the pilot episode is fantastic. And the marketing for Pluribus, I think, did it an injustice because I just thought it was about a show who the entire world was happy. There was one lady left who was unhappy, and they were trying to convince her to be happy. And it's so much more than that. It's so much more interesting than that. Now, it does slow down after the initial episode or two. But I think I find it fascinating throughout, and I like the interesting places that they're going. But I would agree. I get why people say it's slow and meandering and not as exciting as it began. I would agree with that, even though I do very, very much like it.
Well, I still think that it's a great show to watch. I encourage anybody who's listening who hasn't seen it to watch it. It is definitely worth a watch, definitely worth staying on it in future seasons whenever we finally get them. And Brandon, I'm happy that you finally took my suggestion to heart.
And again, thank you for nagging.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar. Brandon, how are you doing on this New Year's Eve?
I'm doing well. I can't believe 2025 is at a close. Seems like it blazed by. I think if you're a Thunder fan, this is the greatest single year of not only Thunder history, but even moving forward. I don't think there will ever be another year that will top this because no matter how many championships the Thunder win in the future, like this could be 23-25. And, you know, two people having a Thunder podcast, or there won't be podcasts, like, you know, people implanting chips in the brain, like hearing people talk about it, whatever you do in 23-25. Nothing will ever top this year because it's the first championship. And all the things that went along, you know, winning the first championship, I just don't think it'll ever be topped.
That's a really good way to look at it, especially because it was the first championship. It was the first championship for the city of Oklahoma City from a professional standpoint. It is an incredibly meaningful year. And now that you put it that way, I agree. I don't think it can ever be topped. And I am, I guess, thankful to be alive and a Thunder fan in the year of 2025.
And hosting a podcast of a team.
And hosting a podcast.
And it was a historic season. Like, not only did the Thunder win the championship, which would automatically make it like the greatest season in Thunder fandom history, past, present, and future, but it's the way they did it. It was winning 68 games, having the greatest point differential of all time. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being named MVP. There was just, and this team is so likable. And this community is so bonded to all the different personalities and people on this team. And it's such a likable team. Like there's just Sam Presti finally getting his flowers and just all the things that go into making this team special, bringing home the championship. It'll just never be topped.
Well, let's talk about more recent history in the last week of Thunder basketball. On today's podcast, we're going to recap those 2 games against the Spurs back-to-back on the 23rd and on Christmas. We're going to ask, do the Spurs have the Thunder's number? We got some bounce-back wins against the Sixers and the Hawks. And then for our fun segment of the year to close out 2025, Brandon and I are going to go through our top 10 Thunder moments of 2025. But let's start with those Spurs games. Let's start on a down note. We'll end on a high note. All right. So game 1, the Thunder were looking to get some revenge from the NBA Cup quarterfinals in that close loss to the Spurs. And in San Antonio last Monday, on the 23rd, the Spurs just absolutely demolished the Thunder. Now, we talked a little bit about get this on the Christmas pod, but I mean, did you expect first that the Thunder would bounce back on Christmas and put together a better performance than they did on the 23rd?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I thought for sure. A few things. They were coming off of 2 straight losses to the Spurs. It was at home and it was on Christmas. So I thought for sure, with national audience, everybody watching on this holiday, being at home, which was different than the first 2 Spurs games and having lost those first 2, I for sure thought that the Thunder were going to win that Christmas Day game. I was as surprised as anybody else, I think, that was watching to see what happened in the first 2 games continue. Actually just got worse for the Thunder on Christmas.
Yeah, because that was a home game. And to have, I guess, that marquee game in the afternoon, coming off of a massive loss to the Spurs, second in a row to the Spurs, and then the Thunder lose at home on Christmas Day by double digits. That was demoralizing.
It was demoralizing. It was shocking. And I've had a lot of people ask me, can the Thunder beat the Spurs? Is this just a matchup issue? Is it a mental block? I don't think it's a mental block. I think the Thunder can beat the Spurs. But you see sometimes with certain matchups, look at the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. There for a couple of years, the Nuggets were the better team than the Timberwolves. But when they matched up, it's like the Timberwolves, for whatever reason, in that matchup, gave the Nuggets fits. And there are certain, even with championship teams, certain matchups that may give certain teams problems. And I think some of that is that. I think some of it is the Spurs get up big for these Thunder games. I think some of it is a little bit of shooting variance. The Spurs, especially their guards, have shot extremely well against the Thunder. The Thunder have not shot well against the Spurs. I think that the Spurs take away some of the things that the Thunder like to do, like score at the rim, is a little bit tougher against a 7'6" alien. I think that scoring in the mid range becomes a little bit tougher because you got a 7'6" alien kind of roaming the mid range. I think some of it's that. So I think it's kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it kind of culminates in this. All that said, in the playoffs, if these 2 teams were to match up, I would still confident. I don't know if I would say confident. I would still take the Thunder and would be surprised if the Spurs team, especially with the relative youth and inexperience in the playoffs, I would still take the Thunder in a series against the Spurs. And I still expect the Thunder to beat the Spurs in this upcoming matchup on January 13th.
And you went through a pretty good list of the reasons why the Thunder might have struggled against the Spurs or the advantages the Spurs have, I guess, presented the matchup issues. But, Wemby has done quite a few victory laps with all of these wins, and he's getting quite a bit of clout for it, and the Spurs in general. But how much of it is Wemby driving these results?
I think that bit is a little overrated. And even though I use it as one of the reasons, because it is one of the reasons, I don't think it is the defining reason. The Spurs guards have played out of their minds against the Thunder, like Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson, De'Aaron Fox. Like if you look at like Wemby's plus minus against the Thunder, like he or if you even look at his raw stats, it's not really. No, obviously, he has effects beyond the box score. I get that. I get his rim deterrence and all those things, but he's also been a bit on a minutes restriction against the Thunder in these games, and the Spurs have been winning the minutes that he hasn't been on the floor because their guard play has been so good. So obviously, Wemby definitely plays a part in this, but I do not think it's been the defining reason. So I think that's been blown up a bit.
Well, and that actually gives me maybe a little bit more concern or belief that the Spurs can replicate their success against the Thunder in future games. And they have two more right against the Spurs this season. Am I thinking about the schedule right?
Yeah, they're both on
have two
national
more.
TV. Yeah, they January 13th in Oklahoma City has been flexed to NBC Peacock, and then they play one final time February 4th, and that one's on ESPN.
Yeah, and I guess in those future games, if the Spurs are not relying on a generational and unique talent like Wembanyama to succeed, and they're doing it with really stellar guard play, where the Thunder should have the defenders to match that guard play, like that to me presents a question. Like, did the Spurs just get lucky 3 times in a row, or did they actually have something?
I mean, I don't think it's luck. I think the other thing is the Spurs are a really good team. I mean, they got a number 1 pick who's a generational all-time prospect in Wemby. Then they got the number 4 pick, Stephon Castle, who ended up being Rookie of the Year. And then they got Dylan Harper, the number 2 overall pick, who is considered a guy who could have been number 1 in a lot of drafts if Cooper Flagg wasn't in his draft class. They got them 3 consecutive drafts. You don't get those 3 guys and not become a really good team. Oh, by the way, they have De'Aaron Fox, who is still in his prime and has been an all-star. They've got Harrison Barnes, who's having a big bounce-back year and who's been a very good contributor to a championship team. And then they have some solid role players like Keldon Johnson and Vassell, Champagne. Like all these guys, like they've got a really good team and a deep team. So some of this is just the Spurs are a good team. I still think the Thunder are the better team. But I don't think it should be discounted how up the Spurs have been getting for these games. Like if you watch the Spurs, and I've watched the Spurs obviously in all these Thunder matchups, but I've watched a lot of Spurs this season. I've watched a lot of basketball. They do not get up the same against these other teams like they get up like they're playing the Thunder. And we knew this. We knew the Thunder would have a target on their back, and every team, it would be, circled on the calendar. You're playing the champs. And then there's the whole Chet versus Wemby thing. There's obviously some beef, at least coming from one side of it. The Thunder can beat the Spurs. I feel confident in saying that. But the Spurs are a good team, and they've played very, very well against the Thunder, and the Thunder have not played like themselves against the Spurs. I think if both teams are playing at full capacity, playing their best games, taking their best shots, I still expect the Thunder to come out on top.
And I would agree with that, right? You brought up the youth and inexperience that the Spurs have, and so in a 7-game playoff series, the lineups, the rotations are going to look different, and then the play, the experience that the Thunder have, that championship pedigree, the proof that they've done it before, is probably a difference maker. And so I'm not picking the Spurs in a 7-game series, even if they've got a 3-0 series lead in the regular season. But they have presented some real challenges to the Thunder. And another thing I want to talk about on the Spurs-Thunder matchup is the way that the Thunder have been defending Wemby. And it seems like there is a hesitancy to put Chet on Wemby defensively. What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, Wemby's going to get his numbers no matter who you put on him. It's hard to shut down a 7'6" dude like that who's as skilled as he is. That said, Wemby's seems like he struggles more against like kind of like more smaller, stout, thick, strong defenders than he does, if you try to put like a 7-footer on him. I would still like to see some looks where Chet's defending Wemby, Wemby's defending Chet, and that's fun, and we all want to see it. They're probably the two best defenders in the NBA, I think. That said, I get what the Thunder are doing, and you want, Chet to be able to roam a bit and help protect the paint in that sort of way. So I get putting J-Dub on him or throwing Caruso on him a little bit, whoever you have, because he has struggled more, it seems like, against, kind of the shorter, stockier guys. And we saw this with Kevin Durant. Like, who did he struggle the most against? It wasn't dudes who were, 6'9", 6'10". It was guys like Tony Allen, that could kind of mess with his handle, like, Wemby's handle, at 7'6" and the length that he has, you get guards or forwards in there who can kind of mess with him a bit, muck it up a little bit. So I get it. I get what the Thunder are doing. I ultimately would be curious to see whether it be Chet or Hartenstein in a 7-game series in the playoffs and what looks they would throw at him then. But I get what they're doing right now, at least.
Do you like seeing players like Alex Caruso try to defend Wemby?
I mean, it's fun. And, we saw what Alex Caruso did against Jokic in the playoffs and how that was kind of like the cheat code against Jokic. So I get, at least in the regular season, throwing these different bodies against Wemby and seeing if it works. Wemby is obviously a different sort of player than Jokic is. But I get to thinking, why not exhaust any avenue in the regular season for a potential playoff series? Mark Daigneault talks about he loves to collect data. And so now he's got some data in a 3-game sample size of J-Dub defending Wemby and Caruso defending Wemby. And like, he's going to continue collecting this data. And then, at the end of 5 games against the Spurs, if they end up playing them in the playoffs, I'm sure Daigneault's going to use the data he's collected and see what the best avenue is going forward in the playoffs.
And, here we are. The Thunder still have the best record in the NBA. I still don't think there is a whole lot of argument that the Thunder, whether the Thunder are the best team in the NBA. But I think some players, Isaiah Hartenstein in particular, had mentioned that the Thunder's focus hasn't been as good as it should have been, and maybe at the same level it was last season throughout the season. I think we talked several times last year about how this Thunder team, they just get up for every game, right? They don't take nights off. And they really do have that 1 of 82 mentality every single game. But do you think there is something to that this season, coming off a championship, maybe there's a little bit of championship hangover, that the focus and the mentality of the 1 of 82 is just not there every game this season?
I mean, possibly. Like, if you look in these games, like even these last 2 games that they won against the 76ers, here's what I would say, I guess. I think that this Thunder team is still leading the league and has a historic net rating, point differential, still easily the best team in the NBA. I think that the Spurs games and that Wolves loss and these, games against the Hawks and the 76ers that were close at halftime, and then they seem to flip a switch and turn it on coming into the second half and shutting the teams down. Maybe there's some of that. It seems like that. But if you look at the overall picture, this has still been a dominant team that had a 16-game win streak before all this stuff happened. And everybody around the league was talking about this could be a team that breaks the all-time, 74 games wins, or 74 wins is on the table. 70 wins is on the table. Greatest team of all time. And, they've gone through a little funk. Is that a focus problem? Is it, not bringing the same intensity? I mean, maybe some of that, but it didn't seem to be that way. And maybe that was a part of it. Coming into the season, they were just like blazing from the jump, like no hangover whatsoever, going 100%. Maybe it's hard to keep that up for 82 games, even for this team after you win a championship. I don't know. I think some of it's just, they got these losses. And so recency bias, it seems like that. But it's hard for me to say that about this Thunder team that I've watched for the last 3 years, this iteration of this Thunder team, like bringing 100% every single night. And based on this small sample size lately, kind of saying that the focus and all those things, intensity isn't the same. I'd still like to see this play out and see where this goes, because it's hard for me to believe that about this team.
And there's still a lot of season left, and every single objective for this team is still ahead of it, including having the best record in the NBA, potentially a historic win type season for at least the franchise, if not for the league as a whole. But we'll go now to the game against the 76ers. It was a bounce-back win for the Thunder, who were coming off 2 straight losses to the Spurs. They won that one, going away, a 129-104 win against the 76ers. They helped improve their lottery draft odds with the win. But, the first half or so, it was like the Thunder maybe playing with their food, or the Sixers were playing or punching above their weight. But it felt good to see the Thunder do what we are so used to seeing them do, and that is just overwhelming an opponent and burying them before the fourth quarter even begins. And that's what happened in the third quarter against the Sixers, right?
Yeah, we've seen this Thunder team flip a switch, and it seems to happen a lot in the third quarter. And, the 76ers, Tyrese Maxey got off to an incredibly hot start in that first half, was hitting everything. And it seemed like the 76ers as a team were kind of hitting everything. And this is a solid 76ers team. They have a winning record on the season. So it's not like this is a bad team, but I think that, especially after, this recent funk the Thunder have been in, and then being at home against the 76ers team, I think everybody was just expecting a blowout from the tip, and it wasn't that way. And it seemed like there was some concern settling in because of like, hey, is there, some sort of issue going on? The second half, the Thunder just turned it on and just overwhelmed them. We've seen the defense that we've come to know with this Thunder team. They just shut everything off. Tyrese Maxey, couldn't get to his shots anymore. So we saw the Thunder team that we've come to know in that second half, and they ended up, blowing them out in that second half.
And Chet Holmgren, I think, was the player of the game in that one. He exploded with 29 points. He also had a great game against the Hawks. Chet, do you think he's definitely an all-star?
I think he is definitely an all-star. He should absolutely be an all-star. His numbers, like he's shooting like near 60% from the field, near 40% from 3, and about 80% from the free throw line. His true efficiency, his true shooting percentage and efficiency is off the charts. Obviously, his defensive impact has been huge. He had 4 blocks in that game. He had 2 blocks against the Hawks. He had 4 at one point, and then they took it down to 3, and then they took it down to 2. I don't know what happened on game film when the NBA statisticians watched the game, but it felt like 4 or 5 blocks. Anyways, he's been dominant defensively, obviously. He's averaging, like 18 points a game, 8 rebounds, 1.5 blocks. He has been fantastic. Also, he's the second best player this particular season. And probably him and Jada will keep switching off season to season. Who's the second best player? Who's the third best player? They're basically a 2A, 2B, I believe, going forward. But the second best player on a team that's dominant, a number 1 seed, typically gets an all-star selection. So if you're going traditionally, where a dominant number 1 seed gets at least 2 selections, and you look at Chet's numbers, and you look at the rest of the West and some of the sort of disappointing numbers from players or injuries and lack of games played from other players, I think that Chet should absolutely be locked in as an all-star, no question. And right now, he's the betting favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. They're the number one seed. He's having a great offensive season. He should be an all-star, no doubt.
All right, there's no arguing with that. Now let's move on to the Thunder's win against the Hawks. Kind of a similar story first half, pretty close. They allowed the Hawks to score 74 first half points. And maybe I'll start there. Was there something wrong with the defense in that first half?
I think some of it was the defense not having the same intensity, and I've never heard Thunder players or coaches talk about this in a post game, but watching the game, I felt this way. So I felt a little justified that they brought it up in the post game. The Hawks were making some tough shots. Like, for instance, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker made a half-court buzzer beater with his offhand, one-handed fling with Caruso in his face. They made a step-back contested three that was banked off the glass. They hit another buzzer beater. They had hands in their faces on a lot of these threes. Typically, when you see a team score 74 points in one half, it's bad defense. I don't think that the Thunder brought their A defense in that first half, so I think that was some of it. But I think some of those shots were just incredibly tough shot making from the Hawks, and it just felt like it wasn't sustainable. And in the post game, Caruso talked about how they were just without Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, they were basically playing pickup basketball, and it was unpredictable and it was sort of chaos. They were just kind of coming down and flinging it, and they just happened to be making a bunch of those shots. So I think credit to the Hawks. Some of it was the Thunder defense.
Well, the second half, the Thunder in the third quarter, especially right out of the gate, looked like they were going to do exactly what they did against the 76ers and extract the life out of the Hawks and run away with this one. They built a 15-point lead, and then the Hawks came back. It was the same kind of thing where the Hawks were just making everything. And that was kind of tough to watch, if I have to admit, because Atlanta was without Trae Young, without their top scorer, Jalen Johnson, and they still allowed the Hawks to score 129 points. And sometimes they're just going to make some crazy shots, but it does make you wonder whether the defensive focus was really there throughout all 48 minutes.
Yeah, so here's the craziest stat. The Hawks tied their all-time franchise record with 25 made threes. They were 25 of 54 from threes. So they put up a lot and they made a lot, 46%. And the Thunder still win by 11. So on one hand, it's like, okay, so how did the Thunder allow them to make so many threes? On the other hand, you look through the box score and it's basically like the Thunder dominated every single facet of this game besides the 3-point line. So, and I do think a lot of it was very tough shot making. Like if you go back and look at the film, there was hands in a lot of faces on those 3-point shots. So I do think some of it, especially in the first half, the Thunder didn't have their same defensive intensity. The turnover battle in the second half really turned around. The Thunder turned them over a lot. So I think they were much more active defensively and more intense and focused defensively in the second half. But the Hawks still made a lot of threes despite that. So I think on one hand, you feel bad that you let the Hawks hit so many threes and you question some of the defense there. But on the other hand, you kind of tip the hat to their shot making and are glad that you came away with a win when a team sets their all-time franchise record with made threes. That will not usually happen.
On the good side of things as well, Shea against the Hawks was really, really good. I put this in my recap here that Atlanta, they couldn't defend Shea. He could have scored 50 points if he wanted, 60 points. He really could have named a score because no matter what they were throwing at Shea, he was able to score at will and ended up having a great night. And I do think, at this point, is Shea the leader in the MVP race?
Well, yeah,
the Jokic injury.
So I think that Shea and Jokic were basically, neck and neck already. I think after the Jokic injury, if Jokic doesn't qualify for games played with 65 games played, and I don't think he's going to, very unfortunate. Hate to see it. He will be back, which is great news. And, Denver is going to be a problem in the playoffs because they could fall to 4 or 5 again instead of being in that 2 or 3 spot. Like, I think every Thunder fan wanted to see the Spurs and Nuggets end up in that 2 and 3 spot and fight it out. And the Thunder only had to take on one of them in the Western Conference Finals. Maybe they'll fall to 6, and we see a first round matchup with the Spurs and Nuggets. All that said, if Jokic doesn't qualify, which I don't think he will, Shea, barring, something unforeseen happening, should have MVP locked. Like, we could be, I don't know, I don't want to say unanimous, but right now, if Jokic doesn't qualify, second is who? Luka? And they've been, the Lakers have been overall, disappointing, I would say, so far. I know they've got a good record, but they've got a negative net rating. They've been blown out. Every single one of their losses have been by double digits. And Luka's efficiency is not even on the same planet as Shea's. You look at the turnovers, all the turnovers from Luka. And then Wemby might sneak into the conversation, but his numbers don't touch Shea's. So yeah, Shea is far and away the leader in the clubhouse for MVP. And we could be looking at a 2-year run of back-to-back MVPs, a finals MVP, and then we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But yeah, Shea was phenomenal against the Hawks. Like you said, 39 points, could have easily had 50. And by the way, the Hawks had Dyson Daniels on him, who was one of the top 3 defenders in the league last year. And Shea is it's like he wasn't even there. Shea got whatever he wanted, 15 to 24 from the field.
Yeah, it was a great Shea game. And I guess tell me if you agree with this. J-Dub, this felt like J-Dub was finding his groove. This might have been, to me, the most J-Dub-like game offensively that we've seen from him since he's returned from injury.
Yeah, and going back to the Spurs, one thing that I didn't mention that should be mentioned, J-Dub is not 100%. He is not himself. The Thunder's second best scorer and playmaker and ball handler is definitely still trying to find his groove, finding his rhythm, dealing with that wrist injury. And the Thunder didn't have AJ Mitchell for a couple of those matchups, who's their third best playmaker, handler, and creator. That's not an excuse. The Spurs still win those games and handily, but it should be mentioned at least. But going back to J-Dub, I think this was one of his best games since he's been back, especially he just impacted the game everywhere. He had 20 points, but he also had 9 rebounds. He also had 7 assists. He also had a steal and a block. He was tied with Casey Wallace for a plus 22 game high in this game. And it just felt like J-Dub. He looked more like J-Dub, the J-Dub that we've come to know. So very encouraging to see. Hopefully he continues to look more and more like himself.
Well, let's move on to the fun part. We're going to recap the top 10 Thunder moments of 2025. You've already introduced the topic well, Brandon, by telling everybody this is the greatest year that a Thunder fan will ever experience. And it was full of epic moments. I think if we're going to do a top 10, we can start at number 1. Number 1 is definitely going to be easy and indisputable, and that would be the Thunder winning the 2025 NBA championship, right?
I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, yeah, it can't be anything else. Yeah, number 1, Thunder win the state's first pro championship. Yeah, that's an all-timer.
What do you have at number 2?
I personally have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander winning MVP as number 2 for the top 10 moments of 2025. I think there's a lot of other great candidates, but seeing, the leader of this team, of this era of Thunder basketball, go alongside Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant as OKC MVP winners, to me, that's got to be number 2.
And I would agree with that. I mean, that's a pretty epic moment. And maybe we can include in SGA winning MVP, but also Western Conference Finals MVP and NBA Finals MVP. Number 3, what's on your list?
Now, here's where we might differ. This is where we, those two, I think, were obvious. Top 2 are obvious. I have, personally, Aaron Wiggins' speech at the pre-parade celebration at number 3. I think that was an all-time epic moment in Thunder history.
And I guess before I interject any comments, I'm going to ask, how many of your moments on this list are related to the championship?
1, 2, 3, 4. I think directly 5.
So, maybe I'll push back on having them broken down into so many different categories, because you mentioned Aaron Wiggins' speech. I'm pretty sure on your list you've got Jay Will's speech or the parade itself. Like that day was, I think, an epic and a memorable day for Thunder fans. And are we cheating the listeners out of a good list if we break those down individually?
That is a fair point, and I halfway agree with that point. But I think that like Aaron Wiggins' speech alone as its own entity kind of like supersedes just being lumped in with championship parade celebration day. I think it deserves its own bullet point. That's how great it was.
Okay, well, I'll allow it. We'll have that be number 3 on the list. So what's number 4?
Okay, well, this is where we can I have just the Thunder Championship Parade number 4. And the reason I think that still deserves, its own mention is because if you look at all the photos on social media, if you look at all the video clips, if you look at like just what that meant to the city and to the state, how 600,000 reported people came out to celebrate, how it was just this culmination of all these years of waiting for the Thunder to win a championship, and like everybody in the state taking part, whether you were there or you watched on the live stream or on TV. It's like the entire state and community of Thunder fandom came together on the Thunder Championship Parade Day.
Okay, that's a very, very good argument. I'm not going to push back on that one. And I would agree that the parade had led to not only a moment of community unity, but all the iconic moments, all of the pictures, all of the video, all the social media, just a really, really special moment as a Thunder fan, a really special day as a resident of Oklahoma. And absolutely, if we're going to allow Wiggins' speech to sit alone, the parade can be on this list. Number 5.
Number 5, I have opening night ring and banner ceremony. Like the Thunder players getting their championship rings from Adam Silver, Sam Presti getting his ring, and then raising the banner in the arena that said the Thunder were the champs. And by the way, just kind of bonus, Kevin Durant is in the building. That's my number 5.
I agree. What a great moment for the Thunder. Really is the icing on the cake to a championship season, is to have the ring ceremony, to watch the banner get raised, and do it in front of Kevin Durant on opening night. All right. Number 6. Is this one championship related? Or are we going to finally move off of that?
Yeah. This one's going to move off of it a bit. This was just playoff run. Number 6 for me, and this may be argued, and I would get the argument, but I think it was this big. Lou Dort's 3-point run versus the Denver Nuggets in Game 5 of the Western Conference semifinals. I think that if Lou Dort, who is not a shooter, by the way, coming into the draft, and it was why he went undrafted. He was supposed to just be a defensive specialist. Lou Dort, of all people, who's been, gotten criticism for some of his 3-point shooting. Lou Dort was the hero, I think, of the championship run. If he doesn't go on that 3-point barrage in the fourth quarter of Game 5, the Thunder likely lose that game to the Nuggets, likely lose that series, and don't go on to win the championship.
So I might offer a different number 6, but I don't disagree. And You mentioned Lou Dort going on that single-handed run against Denver. I think Dort had multiple other moments just like that in the playoffs, including that moon ball in the NBA Finals, which was an absolutely critical shot. I mean, I think Dort coming up with big plays in the playoffs could be a category in of itself. But the alternative I might offer is a similar argument, and it had a monumental impact on the Thunder. And that is, you mentioned Alex Caruso defending Jokic against the Nuggets in Game 7. I don't know if my belief is that adjustment and the way that Caruso defended Jokic was the reason why the Thunder won Game 7.
I think that's completely fair. I do like your idea of like lumping Dort's moments, because that moon ball against the Pacers in Game 7 was huge. I like that idea. I also love the Caruso defending Jokic call out. I agree. I think that those were both Lou Dort's 3-point run in Game 5 and Caruso defending Jokic in Game 7, both absolutely pivotal to the Thunder winning that series and end up winning the championship. So I'm happy wherever you want to go with the ranking.
Okay, well, we'll since you're the Daily Thunder beat writer, we'll give yours number 6. We'll give mine number 7, and we'll move to number 8 on the list.
Okay, so my next one in line was Jalen Williams' 40-point finals game. To see J-Dub, the Thunder's second best player last year, go off like this for 40 points in a pivotal game where he looked unstoppable, to see your second all-star have a game like this, and you needed that game to win the finals. And by the way, we find out later that he was doing all this with a torn ligament in his shooting wrist. I think that absolutely deserves a mention in the top 10.
Yeah, I have no argument with that. I mean, we were kind of running through all these really pivotal moments in the playoffs, and that game by J-Dub, absolutely pivotal to the run. Number 9.
All right, so this one I could see some pushback, because this one wasn't as epic as Aaron Wiggins' speech, and it did take place on Parade Championship Day. So if you want to push back on this one, I'm completely with it. I just thought it was hilarious, and it became like a meme. And, the mayor was like, had to, kind of like, excuse it on the fly. Jay Will's "We the effing champs" moment at the, end of the parade in Scissortail Park, I have listed. I'm okay with you pushing back on it, because there's other moments that could be listed here as well. I just wanted to give it a shout out.
I think it deserves a shout out. I think it deserves a shout out when we're talking about the parade and all the iconic moments that happened associated with that. That moment was one of the iconic moments on parade day. I think we'll include that in the category at number 4. We should give the listeners what they want. Let's give them another moment on a different day. What's next on your list?
My next one on my list was Chet Holmgren returns from the hip fracture. So go back to last season, and this actually happened in 2024 calendar year, but the hip fracture against the Warriors, the Thunder looked like the best team in the NBA, favored to meet the Celtics in the NBA Finals, and to see Chet go down with that injury felt devastating. And then you got the news about how long he was going to be out, and then he was going to be reevaluated at the end of that timeline. And just having the doubt, the wonder of whether he was actually coming back, whether he was going to come back like 100%, what he was going to look like. And then all of a sudden, this happened in 2025, the Shams notification drops. Chet is returning tomorrow. Like, it came out of nowhere. And I think there's just like a huge sigh of relief, because Thunder fans, the Thunder were on fire, but everybody was wondering, what's this team going to look like? They're so good. What's it going to look like when they get Chet back and they're at full strength? So I think to get that notification that Chet was returning, he was returning the next day, the surprise plus the added relief of like, hey, this team can go on a championship run because now they're at full strength. They got Chet back.
I like that, and I agree. And the way that he came back No, I mean, it just was dropped out of nowhere. I guess a very Thunder way to do things. The same thing happened when Jalen Williams returned this season. He was just off the injury report and he was playing. But to me, that was a moment personally where, because the Thunder were already so good and playing so well, I was like, we really are going to be able to win the championship this season. So pretty pivotal moment for 2025 in the championship run. Let's go to number 10. What's next?
So the last one I had listed, my number 10 was SGA's Game 4 takeover versus the Pacers. That was probably the most nerve-wracking game throughout the entire playoff run for Thunder fans, because the Thunder are down 2-1. They're in Indy. They're down in the fourth quarter pretty big, and it looked like the championship hopes were kind of going out the window. Like, a miracle kind of needed to happen in the fourth quarter for the Thunder to win this game and keep their championship hopes alive. And Shea in the fourth quarter hit big bucket after big bucket after big bucket. It was like the MVP moment. Like, you have the player that won MVP on the best team in the NBA when it looked like all hopes were gone for winning this championship, and he took over and single-handedly won the Thunder that game. I shouldn't say single-handedly, because I think Chet's defense was also huge, but Shea's Game 4 takeover versus the Pacers in the finals.
Well, when you put it that way, I'm kind of wondering why it's all the way down at number 10 on our list. But there have been, I guess, too many great moments. All right, so we've got 10, but there were other pretty big moments. One that didn't have such a critical role in the outcome of that championship season, but I think one of the most fun nights I've ever had watching a Thunder game was the night that Aaron Wiggins scored 41. And it was going to be a big scoring night for Wiggins. But in that third quarter, fourth quarter, everybody wanted Wiggins to get to 40. The bench, I mean, he wanted it. Like, that was a fun moment and really enjoyable. So that's one I'd offer as an honorable mention. Do you have some other honorable mentions?
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. It's almost like we should come up with like a whole other list of just like fun moments that should be named like that, because I don't want those to be forgotten. I'm glad that you brought that one up. I have J-Dub being named All-Star / All-NBA / All-Defense. Like, seeing J-Dub get his flowers like that, I think was awesome. I think that the AJ Mitchell breakout, like, this Thunder team is coming off a championship, and then to see him break out the way he has to start this season, and to see that the Thunder have another impactful player who's young on a great contract, is great for this team moving forward. I also had the new arena design being revealed. Everybody was incredibly excited to finally see what the arena was going to look like. I have SGA being named the NBA 2K cover athlete, SGA being releasing his first signature Converse shoe, SGA being in the Netflix starting 5, the Thunder winning 68 games, Lou Dort finally being named All Defense. Those were some of my other honorable mentions.
That's a pretty good list, and I think I have one more for our top 10 list that just didn't make it in the top 10, that was very close. And that is the moment that the documentary came out from NBA TV recapping the Thunder's 2025 championship run. And the very first moment that Brandon Rahbar pops on the screen, iconic.
You know what? We need to redo this list. I got a new number 1. That is a great call out. That is a great, yes. Yeah. So sorry, Thunder winning the NBA championship. You slide to number 2.
Well, this is a pretty good list. Let's recap it again. Number 1, obviously the championship. 2, SGA winning the MVP. Number 3, the very special speech that Aaron Wiggins gave after winning the championship. Number 4, the parade and all the iconic moments that were associated with the parade, including Jay Will's very colorful speech about how we were the champions. The ring ceremony, ring night, banner raising against the Rockets. Dort's 3 barrage to keep the Thunder alive against Denver. And of course, his other great moments in the playoffs where Dort just made a difference. Caruso defending Jokic in Game 7 against the Nuggets. Dub going for 40 in the finals. Chet's return out of nowhere to help the Thunder ultimately win a championship with him being healthy in the lineup for the finals run. And then number 10, SGA's Game 4 NBA Finals takeover to keep the Thunder alive against the upstart Indiana Pacers. And of course, many, many great other moments that were honorable mentioned. What a year 2025 was, and what a year the Daily Thunder podcast has had as a result.
That's right. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun doing the podcast with you all season long or all year long. And here's to many more. And hey, this was the greatest year, past, present, or future, in Thunder history. It was so fun to cover the team and to do this podcast and to just witness this greatness that we've seen from this team. And it's only downhill from here, no matter how many championships they win, because it's never get better than this year.
I know. I think it could get better. I think, a few years from now, 5 years from now, I would like to be sitting here on this podcast and mocking to some degree the LeBron not 1, not 2, not 3 after the Thunder have won not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5 straight championships.
Nice.
That would be a pretty good moment.
I like that. That's true. That is true. Like if this Thunder team ends up becoming a dynasty, winning multiple championships, we may look back on this and say, hey, yeah, that was the first, so it'll always be the most memorable. That was a special season. But hey, it's also fun to count on multiple hands how many they've had since then.
Well, we've run long here going through these top 10 moments. Let's just hope that the Thunder can keep their winning ways alive and close out 2025 with a win against the Trailblazers. But these next few games, Portland, the Warriors, the Suns, and the Hornets, anything notable about any of these games coming up?
The only thing notable I would say is the New Year's Eve tradition continues tonight against the Blazers, and this is a really good chance for the Thunder to pack in a bunch of wins and to, increase that cushion at number 1 in the West, because the schedule gets really tough moving forward after this next slate of games. By the way, a bunch of national TV games are on the horizon in January and February. The Thunder are going to be on national TV like every single night, and they're all going to be, some tough games. So buckle in. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, that is a great place to close. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and he's Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcast. Please make that your New Year's resolution. And we'll be back in your feed soon.